do you have a formal family office structure?
I have two answers to that. I have yes and I have no.
Yeah.
So we do have what we call a family assembly.
Okay.
And we also have what's called an partially embedded family office. So the typical form of a family office can be serviced within, an operating company or a holding company, or you can use services outside, which I'm sure a lot of your viewers know about.
Mm-hmm.
We have a mix. So we have a head office that deals with some of the things for the family.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also use outside advisors depending on what kind of work we need to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Our formal structure is we started with a family council. So about 10 years ago, we had a restructuring of the wealth of the family.
Mm-hmm.
They call that a pruning of the family tree, and which we had done really in the same spirit of which my great-grandfather ran his business. So it's taking care of everybody, making sure things are equal and fair so that people can be set up to do what they need to do based on their own values and what their dreams are.
Mm-hmm.
So after that restructuring, we received great guidance from our advisors. One of them was to set up a formal family council, which was an organization of the shareholders in which to identify our values, what our big dreams are, where we want to see the family to go, and to give guidance to our board of directors.
Mm-hmm.
And then we quickly found out that at that point there were 3 generations sitting around the table. We found out that there were some people who wanted to do that work.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some people who were not really that interested, and they had interests outside of the business that we also wanted to support so that they didn't feel pressure to have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we restructured and turned our family council into a working executive group.
Okay.
And then we had a family assembly, which included all shareholders, including spouses and children of age that could sit around that table.
I think that's pretty incredible that, first of all, that you were able to do this restructuring, as you called it, successfully.
Mm-hmm.
We went through something similar where, basically to get better alignment on where my part of the family wanted to go, we restructured, and, now it's just my parents and me and my brother, which makes it a lot more simple rather than having, uncles and cousins involved.
Yeah.
So I appreciate absolutely how complex that can be. But then it sounds like you then had to restructure almost right afterwards to sort of figure out, okay, this isn't working as a council, so let's do it actually as 2 separate groups.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
Yeah, it was really interesting because, we were those of us who wanted to stay in the business, and those of us, who were really committed. So, certain businesses went to one family, other family members said, I don't want to be in family business, I just want to be family with you. They had left. And so those of us who were left in our family branch were, I would say impassioned for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, okay, this is it. We want to make this work. These are the businesses we want to be in. We're all in it together.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And to be an active, educated, participatory shareholder, a lot is asked of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we underestimated that, and then realized that not everybody wanted to or had the time, because a lot of people had careers. They had families, they were raising families, and so to make that shift, it was like, okay, how can we do this in a way where the people who want to participate can, and the ones who still want to know what's going on but just don't have the time, to do the legwork, to also feel included. And it was really, if I'm to look back on it, it was I would say it's part of our DNA of being together as a family. That never went away. And so those branch members that decided to stay together, that was really strong in our DNA.
Mm-hmm. No, it's incredible. So you spoke at the start about your role sort of at a high level.
Yeah.
I understand what your role is, but for the viewers or the listeners, could you explain a bit about what do you focus on within your current role in the family business?
Okay. So we have, as part of the family assembly, which is the whole shareholder group, we have specific roles for those who want to do more. And my current role is chairperson of the Family Assembly. We have a vice chair, a secretary, and members at large who do some more of the work. And my role as chair ultimately is, if I were to talk outside of family business, I would call it investor relations, which is my background.
Yeah, absolutely.
The investors just happen to be my sister and cousins and aunts and uncles and mom and dad. And so ultimately my job, as I see it, is in communications.
Yep.
And it is to feed the information from the operations, from the board to the family, and from the family and what we want and where we see the company going back to the board and back to ultimately our CEO.
And how many family members are there in total?
That sit around the table, there are 18.
18. Okay.
Yep.
That's a
Which
lot.
is a big
It's a lot of
table.
investors to be chatting with.
That's right.
So I, on a much smaller scale, can absolutely appreciate the complexity of that. I mean, dealing with, as you called it, investor relations, that's complex enough.
Sure.
But then layering on the family dynamics, that's a whole other, aspect. So it's very, very impressive that that's what you do day in, day out.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly important because, as we've talked about before, that engagement and that connectivity and people feeling like they have a voice or they have a seat at the table, that's what keeps, conflict down and keeps the family together.
Absolutely.
And when, in my, opinion or my experience, if people feel like they're being kept out of the loop, that's when resentment builds and things can sort of blow up. So the role you have is one of the most important roles to the longevity of the family. It's pretty incredible.
I absolutely agree with that. And I'm fortunate. I think that before we had our restructuring, because people's values were different and how they wanted to do business was different, and then business was done differently without other people knowing, there was a lack of trust. So we knew when we did the restructuring and we came together, we said one of the things we have to work on as a family unit is to build that trust again, because that had already degraded enough that led to the change. And so we said, how our priority is to do that. How do we do that? So a formal structure of communication, people who are responsible for disseminating that information, what are the lines of communication, policies and procedures for transparency's sake. We put a lot of effort into our governance model so that we have a foundation of trust, because once we have that, then we can move quickly. Then the hard conversations become easier, that we can make decisions a lot faster, and we can be more strategic. And so trust was the motivating factor.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most important thing. If you don't have, that's the benefit of family is usually the trust level is so high, but then when it goes the other way, it obviously goes very quickly. So, all right, I'm Luke Hanson McDonald, and this was Beyond the Family Business. Please like and subscribe and share with members of business families or family businesses that you may know. Thank you.